Imagine humiliating a customer, without knowing he's one of the most famous people in the world, without realizing he's the most feared fighter on the planet. That's exactly what happened at this upscale restaurant. And the ending will leave you speechless. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone, because this story is going to grip you from beginning to end. It all started on what seemed like a regular evening at a high-end restaurant in the heart of the city. The kind of place where the dishes are expensive, the wine is imported, and the staff are trained to treat every detail as sacred. Emily, a long-time waitress at the restaurant, was having one of those days. She was tired, irritated, and clearly on edge. Her eyes told the story of someone who'd been through more than she could handle, and that's when Jon Jones, the world champion MMA fighter, walked in. Dressed in a hoodie, sweatpants, and sunglasses, he entered quietly, without fanfare. Most of the guests didn't even notice him, but Emily did, not because she recognized him, but because she judged him. She scanned him from head to toe and thought to herself, almost scoffing, "Great, another guy thinking he can just walk into a place like this looking like that." Jon, calm and polite, asked for a table for one. Emily forced a half smile and led him to the far back of the restaurant, near the kitchen doors, the spot where they usually seated less important customers. As Jon took his seat, Emily turned to a co-worker and whispered, "Another wannabe baller. Probably a failed football player or some washed-up rapper." Her co-worker chuckled, equally unaware of the storm that was about to come. Jon calmly opened the menu. When Emily returned to take his order, her arrogance was impossible to ignore. "Just so you know, our menu is a bit on the sophisticated side. Maybe I can recommend something simpler," she said with a smirk. Jon looked up, peaceful as ever. He didn't argue. He just smiled gently and thanked her for the suggestion. Then he ordered the most expensive dish on the menu, and to her surprise, pronounced the name of a French wine perfectly. Emily raised her eyebrows, annoyed, and jotted it down like she was doing him a favor. Throughout the evening, her attitude didn't change. She took forever to check on him, barely made eye contact, and clearly treated him like he didn't belong there. But little did she know, someone else in that restaurant did recognize Jon Jones. And what happened next would flip the entire situation upside down. The restaurant's atmosphere was elegant, but tension started to build like static in the air. Not from Jon Jones, but from Emily, who kept glancing at him as if waiting for him to slip up, say something wrong, or fumble with the silverware just to confirm her bias. But Jon was calm, too calm. He sat with perfect posture, his hands resting lightly on the table, occasionally glancing around the restaurant with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was, even if no one else did. And then it happened. A couple entered the restaurant, well-dressed, affluent, the kind of regulars who always got the best table by the window. As they were being seated, the man suddenly paused, squinted toward the back of the room, and whispered something to the hostess. The hostess's eyes widened. She nodded quickly and rushed over to the manager. The energy in the room shifted. The manager, a sharply dressed man with an earpiece and clipboard, walked briskly toward Jon's table. Emily noticed it, and for a brief moment, her smug confidence flickered. "Why is the manager going there?" she murmured under her breath. She leaned to her colleague again and asked, "Did he complain about the service?" The manager stopped in front of Jon's table and, to everyone's surprise, extended his hand with a wide, respectful smile. "Mr. Jones, what an honor." "Welcome. We had no idea you were joining us tonight. Please let me know if there's anything you need, absolutely anything." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Jon stood, shook the manager's hand with a friendly nod and replied, "Thank you. I'm just here for a quiet meal. Appreciate the hospitality." The guests nearby started murmuring. "Wait, is that Jon Jones? No way, the UFC fighter. He's like one of the greatest of all time." Emily froze in place, her face slowly draining of color. Her co-worker looked at her in disbelief. "You didn't know that was Jon Jones?" I thought he was just some random guy," she muttered, voice shaking. "I didn't recognize him. I treated him like—" She didn't even finish the sentence. The manager turned to Emily. "Is this your server?" Jon smiled politely. "Yes, she's been attentive." Emily's stomach dropped. It was the kind of vague compliment that hid a world of meaning behind it. She could feel the heat rise to her cheeks as the gravity of the situation sank in. She hadn't just been rude to a regular customer. She had humiliated one of the most respected athletes in the world, a man who had built a career on discipline, precision, and relentless determination. A man who could have easily embarrassed her publicly or demanded she be removed. But he hadn't. Instead, Jon remained composed, graceful, almost as if he understood more than he let on. Emily excused herself quickly, rushing to the staff area, her hands trembling. "I messed up," she whispered to herself. "I messed up so badly." And yet the story was far from over, because what Jon would do next would leave not only Emily speechless, but the entire restaurant in absolute awe. Back in the kitchen area, Emily leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. Her chest felt tight. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was horrified. Humiliating any customer was bad enough. But to treat Jon Jones, a world-famous athlete, like he was beneath her. She kept replaying her words in her head. "Maybe I can recommend something simpler." The smirk, the tone, the table in the back near the kitchen. Every single decision screamed judgment, and now it screamed failure. Her shift wasn't even over, but she wanted to vanish, dissolve into the floor. How could she face him again? Meanwhile, out in the dining area, Jon sat quietly, sipping his wine. People were starting to take notice, phones discreetly aimed in his direction. A few whispers echoed across the room. But Jon remained unbothered, still, centered. The manager, trying to save face, approached Jon again. "We'd be honored to move you to the VIP section, Mr. Jones." Jon glanced around, smiled and shook his head. "This seat is just fine." That sentence landed like thunder. He wasn't there for status. He wasn't interested in being pampered or recognized. He had come for peace, for solitude. And now, ironically, he had become the center of attention, not by his doing, but by the very people who underestimated him. Emily, after a few minutes of deep breathing and mental rehearsals, decided to go back out. She couldn't hide, not forever. She adjusted her apron, wiped her hands, and walked toward Jon's table with slow, hesitant steps. As she approached, she felt every pair of eyes watching her. Jon looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything around them went silent. "Mr. Jones," she began, voice cracking, I owe you an apology, a sincere one. I was rude, dismissive, and completely unprofessional. I had no right to treat you that way." Jon didn't interrupt. He didn't blink. He just listened. Emily continued, her voice trembling. "I had a really bad day. That's no excuse, I know. My mom is in the hospital and the bills are piling up. I've been overwhelmed. But I took it out on the wrong person. And I'm deeply sorry for that." There was a long pause. Jon looked at her with a stillness that could break walls. But behind that silence was something deeper, compassion. He finally spoke. "We all have bad days," he said, "and pain. It has a way of leaking into places it doesn't belong." Emily nodded, fighting back tears. Jon took a slow breath and added, "But you owned your mistake. That takes guts. And honesty. So thank you for that." Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. No anger, no sarcasm, no power plays, just grace, just understanding, and just when she thought the moment couldn't get more surreal. Jon reached into his pocket, pulled out a small notepad, scribbled something on it, folded it, and placed it gently on the table. "For your mum," he said softly, "and for your peace." Emily looked down. Her hands shook as she picked up the paper. It wasn't a note, it was a check with more zeros than she'd ever seen in her life, enough to cover medical bills, and then some. Her knees nearly gave out, and yet Jon didn't wait for applause, he didn't boast. He simply smiled, stood up, nodded politely, and began walking toward the door. But what happened as he left the restaurant shocked everyone. As Jon Jones stepped out of the restaurant, the cool night air wrapped around him. The buzz of conversations behind him faded, replaced by the distant sounds of the city, passing cars, soft footsteps, and the occasional murmur from those who had recognized him but didn't dare approach. But the moment he crossed the threshold, he noticed someone standing just outside near the valet station. A young man in his early 20s wearing a faded hoodie and gripping a notepad, clearly nervous. He took a hesitant step forward. "Mr. Jones?" Jon turned, calm, as always. "Yeah? I'm sorry to bother you," the kid stammered. "I've been waiting out here for an hour. I heard you were inside, and I just wanted to tell you how much you mean to me." Jon raised an eyebrow, curious. The kid's voice was shaking with emotion. "I was in a bad place a year ago. I mean, really bad. Depression. Drugs. I didn't think I was going to make it, but I saw one of your interviews where you talked about second chances, about failing and getting back up again." The kid wiped his eyes. "That changed everything, for me. I started training in MMA, cleaned up, got my first amateur fight next month. I just wanted to thank you, man." Jon's expression softened. "What's your name?" "Jordan." Jon nodded slowly. Then he walked over, placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder, and looked him in the eye. "Jordan, I'm proud of you. Not for winning a fight, but for fighting when no one else saw you. That's what makes a real champion." Jordan's eyes filled with tears. Inside the restaurant, Emily stood near the window, watching it all unfold. The man she had misjudged, dismissed, nearly humiliated, was now outside showing more humanity than most people she'd ever known. No cameras, no headlines, just kindness. She felt a lump rise in her throat. The manager walked over beside her. "That man's been through hell," he said quietly. "Fame, scandal, redemption. And somehow he came out the other side stronger, not just physically, but as a person." Emily nodded, still watching. "And I treated him like dirt," she whispered. The manager looked at her. "You owned up to it. That's more than most would have done." At that moment, Jon and Jordan finished talking. Jon gave the young man a signed pair of gloves he'd pulled from his car, gloves Jordan would later frame and hang above his training bed. Jon turned back toward the restaurant entrance for one last look. Through the glass, his eyes locked with Emily's, and he smiled a smile of peace, of closure, of unexpected grace. Then he turned and disappeared into the night. But the impact he left behind wouldn't fade so easily. What happened the next day would prove that Jon's visit was more than just a quiet dinner. It would become the spark of something much bigger. The next morning, the restaurant wasn't the same. Emily arrived for her shift early, earlier than she ever had. Her mind had barely rested all night. She kept reliving everything. The moment she snapped at Jon Jones, the apology, the check, the way he forgave her without a second thought. And then that quiet smile as he walked away, like he saw something in her that even she had forgotten was there. As she walked through the doors, she noticed something odd. There was a small crowd gathered outside, a couple of reporters, some teens in MMA gym hoodies. And on the restaurant's front window, someone had taped a printed screenshot, an Instagram post that had gone viral overnight. It was a photo of Jon and Jordan, standing side by side outside the restaurant. Jon had his arm around the young man, both smiling. The caption read, "He didn't want VIP treatment, he just wanted peace. He left us with inspiration." Jon Jones, the real champion. Dr. Gratitude in silence, over 300,000 likes. Thousands of comments. Emily felt her chest tighten again, but for a different reason this time. When she entered the restaurant, her manager pulled her aside with a knowing smile. "You saw the post?" "Yeah," she said, still stunned. "He didn't even say a word to anyone, he just changed everything." The manager nodded. "Some people shout to get attention, others whisper and move mountains. As the day went on, the phone rang constantly. People wanted to reserve the same table Jon had sat at. Locals, out-of-towners, MMA fans. A few journalists even called asking for interviews. The restaurant, once quiet and modest, was suddenly in the spotlight. But Emily wasn't thinking about fame or press. Her mind was elsewhere. That check. She hadn't told anyone yet, not even her manager. The amount Jon had written was staggering, enough to cover her mother's treatment and months of recovery. Enough to buy time, hope. That afternoon, during her break, she drove straight to the hospital. She walked into her mom's room with a different spirit. She smiled for the first time in weeks. "Mom," she said softly, holding her hand. "You're going to be okay, I promise." Her mom looked at her, confused but comforted. "Something happened?" "Someone showed me a kind of kindness I didn't know still existed." That night, after her shift, Emily sat down and did something she hadn't done in years. She wrote, not a text. Not a tweet, but a handwritten letter. To Jon Jones, it began. She poured out everything, her apology, her gratitude, her mother's story, and the change he'd sparked, not just in her life, but in her heart. She sealed it in an envelope and mailed it the next morning to the gym address listed on his website. She didn't expect a reply. She didn't need one. Because some moments don't need to be extended. They just need to be honored. But little did she know, the story wasn't quite over. 3 weeks had passed since Emily mailed the letter. Life at the restaurant had returned to a strange kind of normal. There were still occasional fans asking about the Jon Jones table, and the viral post still floated around social media, but the buzz had mostly settled. Emily's focus was now on her mother, who had begun treatments thanks to the generous tip Jon had left. The weight of financial despair had lifted, replaced with cautious hope. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, something unexpected arrived. A small, thick envelope. No return address, just her name written in clean, powerful strokes. She tore it open. Inside was a folded note on heavy cardstock and a photograph. On the card was a handwritten message. Emily, the world will never run out of critics, but what it truly needs is more people who are willing to change. You did. That takes courage. Your kindness will echo further than you think. Stay strong and keep walking forward. Jon Jones. Emily stared at the letter, her eyes burning. She opened the photo. It was a candid shot of Jon, in a training session with young fighters at a local gym. And there, standing beside him, gloves on, was Jordan, the same young man who had waited outside the restaurant that night, smiling, confident, alive. And in the corner of the photo, written in silver, marker, for the one who served me a lesson I'll never forget. She pressed the card to her chest, overwhelmed. In that moment, she realized something deeper. This wasn't just about a celebrity dining in her section. It wasn't about a tip, or even about redemption. It was about how one single night, one mistake, one apology, one act of grace could ripple outward, changing lives she didn't even know she had touched. Later that week, Emily volunteered to speak at a small community event organized by the restaurant. She shared her story, not with shame, but with humility and strength. And when asked why she was so open about her past failure, she simply said, "Because grace isn't meant to be hidden. It's meant to be passed on." And just like that, what began as a moment of humiliation became a movement of hope. The story of Jon Jones and the waitress who almost humiliated him became a powerful reminder that we never know who we're serving, who's watching, or how deeply a single moment of kindness might change someone's world. If this story moved, you share it. Someone might need it today. And if you haven't yet, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us for more powerful stories like this one.